The new 2020 Dell XPS 13 might look pretty much identical to the 2019 XPS 2-in-1, but there are some substantial differences. I'm actually really surprised. So today we're gonna be comparing these two laptops. We're gonna look at the displays, the speakers, the keyboards and trackpads, even things like performance and thermals, and I'll help you decide which one of these laptops you should get. Let's start out with the exteriors. The design is very, very similar, but the new XPS 13 is actually slightly smaller. You can see the width is pretty much the same, but it is smaller, and it is actually slightly thinner as well. Just a very small difference. Now, if you look at the back, you will notice that there is a difference in the hinges. The new XPS 13 does have an all aluminum hinge compared to the last year's model, but the 2-in-1, as you guys could tell by the name, is a convertible laptop. So you can actually fold the display all the way back where the keyboard, and then the keyboard shuts off. There's actually a nice little magnet that will keep the screen there. And then you can just use the touchscreen either horizontally like this, or you can use it vertically. So if you want your laptop to work as a tablet, you can only get that with the 2-in-1. But honestly, I have almost never used it like this. It's fairly heavy for a tablet at about 2.85 pounds. And it just doesn't feel comfortable holding it like this with all the keys and the trackpad here clicking. And along with that, there is no Windows Hello on this laptop. So right now to log in, I need to find the little fingerprint scanner. There we go, and we're in. Not only do we have the same really nice fingerprint sensor that's built into the power button, like on the 2-in-1 and the previous XPS, but Dell has brought back the Windows Hello facial recognition. Just like that, you open it up, it logs you in. Now, one pleasant surprise with the 2020 XPS 13 is that the hinge is now a one-handed open, as you guys could see. Previously, it was way too stiff. With the 2-in-1, it starts out easily, and then it actually gets much stiffer, and then you can't finish opening it. You have to use it with two hands. And you would think that maybe that's done just for the touchscreen, so to keep it more stable. But this one is actually more stable, even though it's easier to open. If I shake my table here, you could see that the 2-in-1 screen actually moves around more. Now, before we talk about keyboards and trackpads, let me show you some other differences externally. Let's flip these two over. There's definitely some differences in cooling and design. So at the top here, we have these vertical slots compared to these horizontal ones here. And then on the sides, the 2-in-1 actually has 3 smaller ones compared to 2 longer ones. Now, the bottom ones are used for speakers. We'll talk about that in just a bit. There are some differences. Top one is used to suck in airflow. The new XPS, it actually has a little bit more curve, sort of like a MacBook over here, so that when you put them on your lap, there is less chances of these vents and the speakers being blocked. It has a little bit better access to airflow, which is great. Now, the ports are absolutely identical. We have 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, both full speed. That's also used for charging. And we have the micro SD card slot over here, and then a headphone jack. Now, the shape of the trackpads are slightly different, but as far as the feel and the quality, they are basically the same. Now, as far as the keyboards, you'll see that we have page up and page down on the sides, whereas the new XPS, it actually builds that into the up and down key, so you have to hold a function button. Now, you might be able to also notice that this keyboard is actually recessed a little bit more so than the 2-in-1, and that is because the new XPS 13 for 2020 has more key travel. It actually has a little bit more feedback at the same time. So the 2-in-1 has a decent keyboard, it feels good, most people will be happy, but the new XPS 2020 does feel better. When Dell launched the new XPS 2-in-1, it was very impressive for a number of reasons. First off, they redesigned it, but the bigger reasons were that they put in a new Intel 10th generation processors with new graphics, faster RAM, all that stuff is in this laptop. But another big thing is that they showed off their vapor chamber cooling system with 2 fans on the sides and this big chamber to make sure it ran cool and quiet. Now, I was really surprised when I opened up this new XPS and I did not find that vapor chamber inside of there. We still have 2 fans, which is great. The heatsink is connected to the fans, which is great, but they're not using the chamber, and that was very odd. And that got me thinking, is our cooling performance and overall performance going to be worse with this new laptop? We will take a look at that in just a bit. But another thing that I saw is that we still have a replaceable SSD. That is something you do not get with the 2-in-1. Even though this is slightly heavier, slightly larger, your SSD is soldered. So whatever you buy out of the factory, out of the gate, that is what you're stuck with. With this one, you can go ahead and open it up, pull out SSD, even if you buy the base model, put in a 1 terabyte or a 2 terabyte later, and that is one huge benefit of the new XPS 13 for 2020. Now let's talk about the displays. They are almost identical. They're both 4K resolution, actually slightly higher than 4K because these are not 16:9 displays. They are 16:10, so you have a little bit more pixels vertically, which is great for 13-inch laptops. They're both around 4K. They're both around 500 nits, which is excellent, but the new XPS for 2020 looks like it has a little bit less reflections when I move around back and forth compared to the 2-in-1. So it might have better coatings, which is a good thing. But either way, they're both excellent looking, both very nice and sharp. Now let's go ahead and test out the speakers. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, especially if you use a pair of headphones. Now, I am very happy that the new XPS 2020 is louder. That's always been a complaint of mine with a lot of the XPS laptops. And I actually looked into the specs, and the 2-in-1 uses 2-watt speakers, one on each side, whereas this one uses 2.5-watt speakers, one on each side. And it definitely kicks it up as far as volume. On average is about 2 decibels louder. So that is a great thing. The quality sounded very similar to me, and keep in mind you guys are listening through a microphone, through compression, all of that stuff, but I would definitely take the improvement in loudness. Both of these laptops use 720p webcam, so this is the quality of the 2-in-1, both video and microphone. And this is the webcam and microphone quality of the 2020 XPS 13. Let me know of any differences that you guys notice down in the comment section below. Now let's talk about performance. Both of these laptops have Intel's 10th generation processors. They have i7s with G7 graphics, and we're gonna see if the cooling differences are gonna matter when we start pushing these machines. Let's go ahead and run Cinebench, their CPU test. Between my two machines here, there is a difference in RAM. I have 16 gigs over here and 32 gigs for the 2-in-1. Now you can get both of these with 32, and the results are in, and this is interesting. The new XPS actually scores quite a bit higher in single core, whereas the 2-in-1 actually scores higher in multi-core. I'm guessing that is because of RAM. Now let's go ahead and test out the graphics performance. We have over 10,000 on both. This is incredibly high. The previous XPSs were about 5,000 to 6,000, so excellent scores. You can't really go wrong. And I'm also curious about thermals because this isn't really pushing it to the limits. So let's go ahead and run Unigine Heaven, which is a gaming test. It's gonna push the graphics to the max, and then we'll see what happens. Once again, interesting, the new XPS is actually scoring slightly higher, and it was actually slightly quieter as well as far as fan noise. So that really makes me think, does that vapor chamber cooling really help that much? Is it really making a difference, or is maybe that's why they got rid of it for the new one, because it actually didn't? Let's go ahead and just push this to its max as far as the CPU. Let's run Cinebench R20, and let's see what happens with our temperatures and our thermals. So as we're testing here, this is very interesting. The 2-in-1 is actually running at about 20 watts, whereas the new XPS 2020 is running at about 25 watts. As far as temperatures, the new one is actually running hotter, about 100 degrees Celsius, but the fans are quieter, whereas the 2-in-1, it's running at about 80 degrees Celsius or so, and running cooler, but also running a little bit louder. So that is very interesting. And then towards the end of the test, the 2-in-1 is very consistent, whereas the new XPS actually slowed down. It lowered the CPU wattage to 15, and then that got the CPU to be cooler as well. And then now that we're done looking at these scores, the new XPS is actually quite a bit higher in terms of performance. That is something that I did not expect. So it looks like the new cooling system, it is running slightly hotter, but it's also accepting way more wattage. Might be just a software tweak, and the performance is better. And then the fans are a little bit quieter as well. So interesting. Overall, the new XPS 2020 is slimmer, it's a little bit lighter, it performs better, it's slightly quieter, it does run hotter, it has a better keyboard, trackpad is very similar, and you can also switch out the SSD on this one. So if you're somebody that does not need this hinge, which I think most people probably don't, you guys let me know your thoughts down in the comment section, I would probably say that I would go for the new XPS 13 2-in-1. The speaker difference is nice, the keyboard definitely feels better as well. I just did a little bit more typing with it. Now the only thing it comes down to is prices. Right now you can get a little bit of discounts on this 2-in-1 because it's been out longer. So if the price is similar, I would say go for this one. If you're getting the XPS 2-in-1 for a lot cheaper, you might want to go for it. But overall, I would have to give the win definitely to the 2020 XPS 13. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see the full review of this, we will have a little video right over there. You guys can click that circle above to subscribe. And if you need a website, definitely go and check out Squarespace. This has been Max, and I will see you in the next video.